The American Basketball Association is the largest pro league in the world. Some great opportunities for team ownership are available, and the cost may surprise you. If you've ever thought about team ownership in a pro league, give us the opportunity to help make it a reality. Reach out to us for more info. For USA teams at www.abaliveaction.com. In Australia, go to www.abaleagueaustralia.com.
Welcome back to Cut and Mix. I am Vanessa Hundley, aka DJ Audioprism, back with you live as we wander through our COVID-19 experience and the fabulous year of 2020. And I am joined today by somebody that I had the fortune of talking to just before everything started getting a little hinky and weird, and then a lot hinky and weird. And so I have Berny Martin of Catou Fashion House with me today to talk about fashion on a global level and how much it has changed and how it has been impacted by COVID-19 and the coronavirus experience, and some of the things that we're looking at as we all move forward out of this experience. So Bernie, thank you so much for coming back and being on camera with us today.
Thank you for having me once again in your show. It's a pleasure to always be with you and to communicate and talk about fashion, one of my favorite topics. And, definitely a lot has changed since Corona or Miss Rona decided to show up in our lives. And now that Miss Rona seems to be gonna have a nice stay in our life, God knows for how long, whether if it is invited or uninvited. So we in the fashion industry have to make our way around Miss Rona. Maybe we'll dress Miss Rona one day. You never know.
Exactly. I mean, it could become like a full-on fashion line full of all kinds of little puffballs and interesting
Exactly.
textures.
You never know. Never know.
Who maybe missed the first interview, Bernie is an international fashion designer. He has colorful and innovative lines, and sustainable fashion is one of his key points in his designs. He also does a lot of custom fashion, designing wear for clients that have a particular image or fashion that they're trying to put on themselves to be part of their, to exhibit their personality, as it will. So you can find fashion shows of Berny Martin Catou Fashions all over the internet, so you can view that or visit his website, which is catouwear.com. Right?
Yes, catouwear.com. That's correct.
Yes. Good for me. I didn't have to look down at that one. So as we're talking about fashion, of course, obviously we're going to get to the point where we talk about the designs, but when you're talking about fashion as an industry, there's a lot of levels to this industry. And we really have to look at it from a production standpoint and not just a design or distribution standpoint. And so when we're doing this conversation, we're looking at how COVID-19, and for people in the far, far future who are like, what is this? Is a zoonotic virus that originated in the Wuhan province of China. Mm-hmm. And as we know, China is a huge manufacturing hub for a lot of fashion and pieces of fashion. So the timeline, the gist of the timeline that I'm finding is right around the time that we talked, which is back around the beginning of February, end of January, is when the fashion industry first starts showing real concern about the supply chains that were coming out of China. And I know you had mentioned before when we were talking about raw materials and how that plays into the development of fashion. So I guess let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the, how do we get the materials that we need to produce the fashions that are created?
Definitely. Fashion, I like to call it, it is when someone says fashion industry to me, it is a very ambiguous industry that encompasses so many other industries that people don't even know that exist within the fashion industry. You know, so for instance, farming. You know, it's one area a lot of especially when I'm meeting with fashion designers and so on, they have no idea where those supplies come from, what make it, how did it start, you know, what is cotton? Cotton is a plant. And we pick the fiber and we weave it, we wash it, we clean it, we wash it again until we remove all the debris and stuff like that, until what we are looking at as cotton that we wear. Okay? What is wool? Well, wool is animal hair. Okay? There's all type of animals that we use their hair in order to produce the wool. Okay? And then we have hemp. Okay? Hemp is also used in the manufacturing of fabric. And then another one is polyester or plastic. And the reality is plastic is actually one of the basic of every fabric that you are wearing. Everything that you are wearing has plastic in it.
I didn't realize that. I mean, what if it says 100% linen or 100% cotton?
They're lying to you. They're lying to you. They're lying. Yeah. And I can prove it to you, okay? If you take the linen or cotton, there's a little bit of elasticity when you pull the fabric aside. Which us as fashion designer, we love that elasticity. We love it. But of course, depending on how much flexibility there is in the fabric, it tells you how much plastic is being used into that fabric.
Huh.
Okay, so the more plastic you use, the more stretchable it is. That's why you have, I'm sure you heard of that term, four-way fabric.
Yeah. Okay.
So why you think it's 4 ways? Because of plastic. Plastic makes it stretchable on all 4 different corners.
That's really, I see, learn something new every day.
Yeah. and polyester came from what? Petroleum. The same petroleum that we use in a car to fuel our car energy. There's a waste that come out of it. Okay? And that chemically engineered during World War II, by the way. Okay? And they figured it out because the American wanted to use that for parachuting.
That makes sense, actually.
Prior to that, we were using silk, and the Japanese had put a major stop. Okay, talking about production line, had put a major stop in the production of silk road, the silk industry, because the Japanese were controlling most of Asia warfare. Okay, they are sinking boats, everything. So there were nothing going in and nothing coming out of Asia. So guess what? We figured it out. We made plastic. Okay, so through evolution of the petroleum, now we have an abundance of things that are made out of plastic. But that all started during World War II. So now, when you're looking at plastic as it become an essential, very essential product in the fashion industry, now we still use it today in the production of everything that we do in the fashion industry.
And obviously you don't farm petroleum, but it's another resource that is part of that initial supply chain that gets you the materials you need to start the manufacturing
Yeah.
process. And
And
you know, as we know, China got hit by the virus really hard, and I imagine that hit as much of their farming community too as it did some of the big
exactly.
cities.
So if there's nobody working the farm, you know, whether removing sheepskin or picking cotton or
Mm.
even skinning, well, there's another one, leather.
Yes, leather.
The
Yes.
what is that? That's animal skin. Okay, from ostriches to cows, whatever.
Hmm.
Right. So all those products, there's no in Corona. What is done? Everybody stay home. So therefore, that's where the challenges of where the supply is coming, and that was just the beginning of it. Then you have to move on to other part of the production.
Hmm. Well, when you get into when you look at the timeline, you know, by January 31st, Levi Strauss, and you know, they make denim and jeans and a lot of denim products and other fashions. They shuttered half of their stores in China, and they weren't one of the only ones, because not long after that, you started, you know, a lot of those textiles and the polyesters and other apparel industries were starting to feel the pressure, because now not only do you have people that can't work the fields and you've got supplies building up, but now you've got more people getting sick to where the supplies can't be even processed to be usable.
Exactly.
We were seeing a lot of issues with that in the meat distribution industries later on. But you also, like you said, you have a lot of people staying home. So people aren't shopping. They're not going out and buying the products, which keeps
Exactly.
stimulating the cash flow that keeps being able to buy the materials and put them
Exactly.
produced.
And the other issue you would have, some of those big companies, what they were doing, I'm sure you heard the term forecasting the industry. So
Hmm.
basically, you're buying product you're hoping people would buy in 6 months in advance, in sometime all the way to 2 years in advance.
Right.
So what ended up happening now, we have all those products that we did place order about a year ago. Now
Yes.
it's just sitting there.
Yes. Yeah, because they can't be shipped. You know, not only
Not
do you have your supply chains,
no
but your distribution is.
okay. There's no store to do distribution.
Mhm.
Okay, unless you're doing some stuff online. Okay, but that's what's going on. We have some warehouses now that have an abundance of product just sitting there. And when we are talking about sustainability, now us as a designer, we have to create things now. We're gonna have to, where I find it more sustainable is to partner with those manufacturers to see how we can either take that same product that they already made instead of creating new products, and pushing it out there in order for it to sell. Because obviously, creating new products is not going to solve the issue of a warehouse that's already at 100% capacity of stuff just sitting there.
Right. And perfectly usable stuff too, not stuff that's, you know.
Exactly. Perfectly reusable. So imagine what's going on right now. You have a lot of warehouses that have a lot of summer clothes and spring clothes that never sold.
That's right. That is absolutely correct, because a lot of people didn't go anywhere for the spring.
Yeah. Whether they are fabrics, garments, or whatever it might be, And the thing is, for us, we've been a machine. The fashion industry been a machine,
Yes.
okay, for God knows how long now. I would say for the past 30 years, we've been doing stuff on an equivalent of every a year, 1 year in advance. And then fast fashion came, made things even faster, or
Yeah.
even, I like to call it even worse, more pressure.
Yes. And we're definitely going to talk about the fast fashion movement in a little bit later, because I think some people are like, what is fast fashion? And they don't realize that they've actually been partaking of it for quite some time.
Exactly. And then that had increased the demand of forecasting things even far faster, you know. So you have companies that used to make maybe 1 or 2 collection a year. Now they have to produce 6 to 7, 8 collection a year. And
Wow.
now all those products just, yeah. And now companies that have taken loans to make the production, now they're like, oh, I can pay you because I'm not making money, you're not making money, we're not making money.
We saw a lot of, you know, what they the retail industry meltdown, basically, which was already kind of happening, but this really pushed it along. And
Oh, yeah.
we saw stores all over the world, especially in fashion, start closing down. One, you know, to avoid getting the virus, and then, you know, two, because some of them just didn't have the money to open back up. And it was also at a point where, come about, you know, February or March, people that still had production contracts were desperately trying to find supplies from other countries other than China, or countries that were starting to spike up that they might normally have used. Do you, or have you had any friends or associates in the industry that have told you about closings they've had to be part of?
Yeah. So, for instance, in Portugal, I have several companies there, and also in Italy. They got hit pretty hard, you know, because a lot of things, those countries rely heavily on countries like Britain and also France to do production for them, you know. So
I didn't
now,
realize. Huh.
yeah. So now they are basically on a sitting still on a bunch of product that they already made for all those stores that are not even opening anymore. You know? So basically they just have a warehouse full of stuff that they made for a company that they no longer want.
And it'll be out of season by the time, you know, technically speaking, in
Yeah.
fashion parlance.
Yeah, and that's the thing here now, how they are gonna be looked upon, and I think it is our job also in the fashion industry to educate the public as far as that instead of recreating a new collection, we can call it what it is. Hey, we would like for you to go on and call it the Corona collection.
Yeah,
You
have some fun
know,
with it.
yeah, and then the problem with all those garments, what end up happening, they're gonna more likely sitting if no one is gonna do it or somebody decide to do a new collection, they just gonna end up on a landfill somewhere, you know.
And
And
there's a big problem with that, with landfills.
and then we already have problem with landfill, so it's just gonna be more stuff being dumped on the landfill. So you have some countries, from what I understand, I believe Germany are taking action against some fashion companies that are not making decision in terms of like taking into consideration how their product gonna be dumped in the landfill if they are not taking any responsibility to predict the forecasting method. So in other words, if you're not buying it or selling it, why producing it?
That makes complete and utter sense.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I
you
believe
should produce something you weren't going to
and
sell.
I believe Germany is the one that's gonna take action against companies already. And I believe some other countries are following suit in Europe.
I think we've kind of hit a peak where we're a lot more cognizant of the waste that has been that a lot of industries have. And with yours, or with your industry, it's product. With the electronics industry, it's, you know, the landfills that get filled up with electronic waste because they're not being properly recycled or reharvested. So we see that, but you don't think about all the synthetic materials. Like you said, there's plastic in almost everything. So when people are like, well, I'm just throwing away a shirt, it's cotton, it'll biodegrade. That
No, that's
shirt
not
probably
true.
doesn't biodegrade the way they think it will.
No, no. Depends on what company it is, and I can
Mm.
honestly tell you most, especially like dress shirt. have
Yes.
about 10% plastic in it.
Okay. So.
You know, even if it says 10%, and the way you can see that, you can put it in a in a next to a heat. You see how it burns.
Yes, I was gonna say, does it melt or does it burn?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You can see how it melts. So
Yeah.
it tells you. So all those products they're just gonna sit in a waste. And if we are not cautious enough when people are referring to how we can protect this special planet that we have, it's about why don't we take responsibility in the fashion industry as far as like creating things instead of being in competition to one another. Oh yeah, I have all this. Why don't we look at and say, you know what if I teach my consumer how to buy more effectively, with products that not only gonna last them longer, but that's gonna be more meaningful as far as like how long they can wear certain things. And that's what I've done in with my company. You know, when someone wearing a jacket, I was like, yeah, that jacket, you more likely you will leave it for your grandson. And then he looked at me, he's like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, that's a very good fabric. And 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 the message behind that, you have to look at what if that person was buying 10, 12, 20 jackets a year, that is not a good fabric. Guess what happened? He dumped it, but he doesn't even know where he's dumping it, where it's gonna go, or how it's hurting more of the planet, or even the product that goes in the chemicals. Okay, because to obtain a color, you see all those colors in my scarf, those
Yeah.
they are made out of chemicals.
Yeah, they're dyes. Yeah, you're right. They're made out of chemicals, just like that.
Exactly. So those chemicals they go into the earth as well. The waste of that they dump them in the sewer, and the sewer goes where? In our river, in ocean, whatever you name it. So the less of a chemical we use, the less of those plastic products we use, the better.
Well, let's on that note, we can of course segue to the design side of the industry because the supply chain obviously there's a lot of rethinking that is going to happen with the supply chain, and it's not even just for fashion; it's with many other supply chains as well that people are looking at, bringing back closer or making it so that it is uh,
Sorry.
not so difficult to maintain their supply lines, as it were. And some of them, just as a little side note, some of the people that were manufacturing fashion actually switched focus during the COVID response and started manufacturing PPE or protective gear for medical workers. So some of them started making masks, some of them started making gowns, which is a wonderful thing to look at. And now we're looking at the design part of it, where you have designers, and this is where we can talk about fast fashion, because that's what you were talking about. Fast fashion was, literally somebody going to a fashion show, maybe seeing a wonderful design that you did, and then going back to somewhere else to another smaller design house and maybe cranking out, 30,000 of a similar fashion that was to something that they saw on the runway, and then doing that and keeping it, keeping everybody on trend per se, but using poor quality fabrics. You'll see a lot of what they call fast fashion stores, and I'm not going to name any of them by name because there's too many of them to do that. But the kind of thing where you can walk in and, you could get a shirt that looks really cute, really nice and whatever for like $15 or $20. But the first time you wash it, the seam's going to come apart. Or the third time you wash it, you're going to end up with holes in the t-shirt because it's just a very thin and cheap fabric. So they can get it made fast, shipped fast, and on you fast, and then you wear it fast, and then you throw it away, and that's your fast fashion. And now you've bought 20 shirts when you could have bought, 2 really good ones and have them with no holes and in much better shape.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you've always used sustainable ideals behind your designing. So how do you choose your fabrics when you're looking at something that you want to keep it around? What is it that makes slow fashion versus fast fashion?
Well, when it comes to the term fast fashion as well, is because of the globalization
Mm-hmm.
of the market of fashion. Not that globalization was not even a thing. Of course, we've been human being has been on the globalization of anything. This is the dawn of man. Okay,
Yes.
when you're looking at the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, it's all about globalization. One group wanna showcase their ideology and so on and so on. So fashion, what really happened with the fast fashion is the fact that they want to. Some of those manufacturers was like, hey, how can I maximize my profit? You know, what can I do to make more money? I know I have $1 billion now, but what if I want to become a trillionaire and a zigallionaire or whatever? And that's what it comes down to, is greed. You know, it is definitely 100% greed. And those companies, they don't have a desire per se to accommodate to what.
We froze up. Okay.
Yeah, they don't have a true desire to see how they can make the world better in terms of like to supply what's available for them. It's all about, you know what, there's a whole world waiting for us out there. How can we make it more money out of it?
Yeah. So yeah. Exactly. There's this big opportunity to just take the money and run. So how can we do
Right.
that?
That, and then let's make as much money, okay, as fast as possible and at a much
Mm-hmm.
faster rate as possible. Versus slow fashion, as people might want to call it, you know, has a different approach. The idea there is that if nobody's buying it, therefore I'm not producing it. Okay, so that's my approach. Yes, I do have ton of fabric in a warehouse that I pre-buy, pre-purchase, or anything like that. But guess what? It's just waiting for clients to be purchased. If nobody buy it, I'm not gonna cut it. I'm not gonna distribute it.
Right.
I'm not making it. So is the fabric in a controlled environment where I'm not dumping the fabric that's not being used in the X amount of time? Yes. You know, it's sitting waiting for a client. And is that more sustainable? Yes, it is. Am I gonna be in a situation where I'm looking at the fabric and say, oh, I wish it was moving faster? Yes, I have that desire. Don't get me wrong. That's us as human beings. But at the same time, I'm looking at the fact that, you know what, there will become to time where there is gonna be a better sense of using that fabric, and it just the time is not now, you know. Or I can,
Right.
yeah, or I can use marketing strategy to push a certain type of fabric. But yes, I make clothes if it's not being ordered, therefore I'm not making it, and that is more sustainable.
And that's an approach that in the ideal scenario, we'll see more and more designers kind of looking at that idea and not just trying to just crank out the next biggest thing as fast as possible. Um, how do you see it changing things? As a designer, most of the designing you do is, as I assume, a probably pretty solitary activity when you're sitting down to draw out ideas and think things out, or maybe you have a couple people that you bounce ideas off of when you're considering maybe a certain new design, or, and obviously you're talking to, your custom clients about that as well.
Yeah.
But when you are, thinking about design as a whole, when you're thinking about the design schools and you're thinking about the design collaborations and such, do you see more of that heading online than maybe has been in the recent past?
No, I said, unfortunately, the age of mailing order is no longer of a thing. So therefore, the next thing is going to be e-commerce. You know, where you see it,
Yes.
and then they ship it. Unfortunately, we're not going to go backward as human beings. Okay, but what we can do, we can change the narrative of our behaviors. You know, where we somewhat take a conscious decision from the top, not from the bottom, from the top. When you're looking at big giant companies making a decision, instead of looking at profit, profit margin, what can I do to make my consumer more sustainable? So instead of producing a bunch of product ahead of a time, what if I place we make the product when they place the order? Then we know exactly how many we need to make, versus when you do pre-forecasting, you're basically creating a bunch of product that's going to be sitting there and hopefully somebody buying it, whether that product is popular or not.
Which is how so much of it tends to end up in, the second sale shops, like when you're finding the outlet stores and stuff like that. It's like it's got extra products.
Exactly. Like, for instance, Italy, in Portugal, they do those second-hand, not second-hand, the what they call it again? Existing collection.
Yeah, we call those outlet stores here usually, or something like that, or they'll have an off-the-runway area or something.
Yeah, exactly. But there, they even have something even faster than that. So you as a boutique owner in the United States, you can fly to Italy and buy a collection that did not perform well.
Okay.
And then they ship it to you at your door in bulk, and you have all those, because they are just clothes that are just sitting there that they thought that people were gonna buy it and never bought. But
it's better they make a little on it than have it sit there.
Exactly. Versus if you take the other route, you know what? Hey, let's put the picture of the product online. Let's wait for the order, and then tell the client, listen, I'm here to support you, but at the same time, I'm here to support our planet.
Yes.
Why don't you wait 2 weeks? We're not gonna get anybody killed. We're not gonna get our planet messed up. Take a chill pill. Go watch a movie.
Yes, exactly. Slow down a little bit. I think we can use a lot of slowing down in a lot of capacities in our life these days. Okay, but when you're talking about fast fashion, and we were talking about the sheer numbers, I don't think people realize the scope of overproduction, which is the term for making way more than you actually know that you need. Can fall to the 30 to 40% of the inventory can be overproduction in fashion.
Yep.
Which is a lot of clothes.
A lot.
Yes, and so when you're talking about custom cutting stuff, or doing things, obviously we would all love to have more custom made clothes and such, but for the bulk of people, that may be something that they just can't afford. But do you think there are more sustainable ways of doing mass retailing for people that aren't as interested, or don't want to necessarily partake of the custom fashion idea? Are there mass producing ways of possibly being more?
Yeah, and then what it's called pre-order.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, as designers, we can create a sample for you in which we put it on the internet or the runway or whatever it is, okay? And then with that pre-order, I mean, you can see it now on the internet. People can place the order, and next thing you know, there's 1,000 order.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's great, because you know you have 1,000 people that already bought it.
And then you know exactly there is 1,000 people bought it. Why would you make 2,000? Why would you make 20,000?
Yes,
You know?
exactly.
So for that first 1,000, you make exactly 1,000 order. And then you left it there, and then you wait for another week or 2 weeks, or however long it is, you know, to get your product. You get your product, and then if there is another wave of people that want to order, and then let's say from that 1,000, everybody sees, oh my God, that was a beautiful shirt. Oh my God, where'd you get it? Oh Lord, all that going on, and you tell your friend, they go to the place again and place another order. This time you have 10,000 order. But guess what? You make 10,000 order. But let's say that before that, in which sometimes we work with what you call people again, that are placing forecasting. They call them fashion forecasters, right? They are in the business to tell companies how much of that product gonna be sold out there. And a lot of times they are the one telling those companies you need to make 50,000 of them or 100,000 of them.
I think there's going to be a lot of shifting in that industry, because I imagine, like with a lot of other industries, we're going to see a very drastic change in thinking and demand when it comes to fashion. But you did say earlier, you know, one of the ways to present the clothes to people in a sustainable way is obviously with the fashion shows, which are of course a huge key part of fashion, because how else do you know, put together a whole collection and show off that whole collection? But of course, like many other industries, fashion shows have also been something that became a near impossible thing to think about in terms of the coronavirus, because you're talking about people coming from all over the world, between the models and the makeup artists and the show designers and the lighting designers and everybody coming together for these shows. So we've actually seen, as with many other industries, the rise of virtual fashion shows. And Shanghai notably was one that had that with their fashion week towards the end of March, and they did a cloud fashion week. Some shows have been rescheduled towards the fall, and what we're really, I guess, hoping worldwide is that in some way, shape, or form we'll be able to have a vaccine or get a handle on it before then. But it's not impossible that we may see more swells of this over the disease of the virus over the next year. So I think in a lot of industries, we're going to see virtual events kind of starting to take the forefront. Have you been part of any virtual events?
Not yet. But I know that will be the thing of the future. That we will more likely engage ourselves more. But the other reality is the term virtual fashion shows have been in existence since early 2000, in matter of fact. Okay. We in the fashion industry have not had the urge to change things, because the glamorous part of the fashion show part of it, you know, with the PR, the marketing, because you have to realize fashion shows was not just a fashion show.
Right.
It was a networking event.
Yes.
That's why I like to call people, you know, there's a lot of fashion shows that did not make money for the fashion designer.
Right.
Compare when you're looking at fashion shows back in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, or even throughout the 80s and 90s, a fashion show was meant to be for placing order, where you have a lot of buyers and editors and so on. But early 2000, guess what was happening? Fashion show became a networking event for paparazzi, celebrities, and eventually, we're looking at now, you have a lot of internet influencers. Yeah, so the virtual fashion show has been going on for a lot of buyers. and
Okay.
edit and so on. But the live fashion show, I think, yes, it's gonna hurt a lot of industry because it was intended to do for a lot of celebrity, the paparazzi, all those companies that are inviting celebrity to take their product or affiliation. It was a product placement, basically, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that's what's gonna stop for maybe for a little while. But I don't see it dying out completely because part of it is an industry of its own. You know, you have the show producers, the light producers, and those guys not gonna stop doing what they're doing. It's just gonna shift. It's gonna shift the acknowledgement of the way it was presented before. Now they're just gonna doing it differently. Do I see a virtual fashion show being completely decorated with stage like Chanel been doing? Yes. Do I see it? They're still gonna do it probably in a high-end yacht somewhere in south of France displaying. Yes, I can still doing that. It's just that the amount of people that you probably were in attendance more likely are no longer going to be there. So what more likely going to happen is going to be the show producers, the people that are involved, the models, the makeup artists, and voila, you have a fashion show that's going to be fully displayed on the internet. So that's what I see. Yeah, for us, we did end up canceling our shows. So right now we are still in standing to see what probably gonna be the future of that for this year. I'm in communication with my team in Europe and also in New York and Chicago. We'll see how the governors or those places gonna be because even today we were like discussing with my team in France. It's fashion show is gonna be in 2 months and a half. So we're basically gonna cancel that show because there's no way we can put a full production in that much of a time. And not only that, not knowing also if the country or France gonna be open or not, or if they're gonna even allow Americans to come to that country. You know,
Yeah.
so and then same thing with Chicago. Are they gonna allow people to go into venues? Because right now the limitation you cannot do anything more than 40 people. You
Yeah.
know, and in New York City, for instance, you are not allowed to do anything at all. You know,
Yeah.
so it all depends on when they're gonna do it, how soon they're gonna do it, if anything, if they're gonna even do it at all this year. So right now we're all looking at next year.
Yeah, pretty much 2020 has kind of become a wash in a lot of the entertainment aspects. I know even in my industry, we're looking ahead, and I mean, I have people booking events for the fall, but we're all kind of doing it with the caveat of we don't know if it's actually going to happen because
Yeah.
each month that comes, they push things further back. In America, for people watching this in the far, far future, there's a lot of conflict and debate over simple safety things and resources
Exactly.
and there I kind of I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine that was from Canada, and I said I'm kind of interested to see how many countries are going to let Americans in for a while because
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yep.
yeah, because unlike so many of the other countries that were very aggressive in their lockdowns and their quarantines, we've basically been fighting each other the entire time. And I know there's a lot of countries in the world looking at us going like, we might not want them
Those
around.
Americans.
Huh?
Be careful with those Americans.
Yeah, like you needed any more reasons to be, wary of us or anything there.
No, absolutely. It's the same. What you just said is exactly what my team was discussing. They said even if those European countries are open, are they gonna allow the American to come in? We don't know. And when are they gonna allow American to come in? We don't know either. So yes, Europe might be open to travel from one European country to another European country. They kind of like they have to because of the European Union. You know, there's a lot of travel between those countries, inter relationship and business and stuff. But as far as like letting people in from other part of the world, I don't know. I'm not sure when that's gonna happen. So we are all sitting and entertaining the idea to do something in the fall. We're not sure if it's really gonna happen or not.
And you've always had a very worldwide view towards, not just fashion, but you're also very passionate about people. And in 2009, you actually got an award from the United Nations. And I wanted to bring that up because, I mean, nothing says it better, United Nations. And so how did that come about? Talk to us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, back then I was a lot younger, so I had all black beard, so they were so much in love with my charm, so that's why they created. No, I'm kidding. No, in a friend of mine was working for a organization in Africa, and it was always an ideal for me to see what is it like to be in Africa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To somewhat track who you are as a black man in this world. And it was very much a self-discovery trip for me to be in not only be in Africa, but at the same time serving the United Nations. So when the opportunity came, I jumped on it. It was a organization to see how we can help and assist young African entrepreneurs. And there were different groups of us that were offering our services in different industry. So of course, my part was the fashion industry. There were people that in global health, architecture, engineering, businesses, how to apply for banks, journalism, you name it. All characters and all part of life, that wanted to have somewhat a sense of communication with a lot of young Africans. So that's how I became involved with the United Nations under my friend relationship. And I did that for about 4 years, just going in there and do fashion shows and raise money and raise awareness of different causes, So that's how I earned the title.
See, it's I've always encouraged other DJs and artists that I know to use your talents to give back because so they're like, well, you could do this and you could do that, or you could do this, but if there's a way that you can take your passion and have that passion help other people, it just becomes this, more complete self-expression of your particular motivations towards people. And I've been lucky enough over the several years to be able to do a lot of work with different organizations. So I'm always a huge cheerleader of that aspect because it can be really easy to have your focus so on the business side of it that you can lose track of the people side of it. So, actively choosing to use your craft to give back can bring those two facets together.
Well, and then not only that, it was a great way to also learn their perspective, not so much about like your own perspective alone, because we on this planet, we are truly a global village. Nothing is the same wherever you go on this earth. So for me, it was definitely a learning opportunity in which that ended up serving me very, very, very well in my career to understand global fashion and what the future of it and how it started and how we can make an impact. And through the organization of United Nations and others that were there, it really gave me a global perspective of what fashion is.
So what do you have? I know your upcoming show is, canceled because, we just have to think, reality and logistics and stuff like that. But what have you been doing in terms of designing, if anything, or what do we have to look forward from you, ideally, hopefully, maybe later this year or?
Sorry. Right now, I'm somewhat what you call doing a lot of investigating of what is sustainable, what is not sustainable, what is gonna be effective and not essential. Not just for me as a company, but at the same time for the future of the fashion period. And what are we doing to make our part of making our imprint instead of focusing on profit and taking advantage of other situation, So that's what I've been doing a lot. And at the same time, we are working on a new design, new concept, new strategy, and that I think knowing the narrative of what's been going on, especially now in the United States, and how we can make the human race more interconnecting to somewhat have a conversation. The reality is the fact that we've been sitting and work tirelessly and not knowing even who are our neighbors, don't even say good night, goodbye. We don't even know what our downtown really look like. We just drive, we eat, and then we drove off, So for me, I'm trying to design around those narratives to see how I can bring a story to your table where you're wearing my clothes and make you have a forceful communication with not only the person that in your house, but the people that you're encountering.
I love that. It's a beautiful aim. It's continuing to bring people together through fashion, but maybe, using a stronger thread this time. And like you said, we've hit, especially in America, where it almost became like a badge of honor to be overworked and stressed out. And this is literally a once in a lifetime moment where for a lot of us, it was a flat out a pause button. Unfortunately for some people, it's also kind of a stop button, but hopefully, we can help bring a lot of those people back up. But I think a narrative that we've seen growing more and more as people talk is, why were we doing that to ourselves? Why were we so caught up? And, some goals where the marker always keeps moving. It's never enough. It's never, you don't work enough. You don't own enough. You don't buy enough. You don't watch enough. You don't say enough.
There's always not enough thing always coming up. Your car is not enough. Your house is not big enough. You name it. Your steak is not enough.
Exactly. But I think we're going to start seeing a movement towards more sustainable way of lives in many industries. And I really hope fashion is one of those. I adore all kinds of fashion, but just for the most part, my body's not built for a lot of like the trendy fashion stuff. So I've always been kind of like, if it looks good on me, I'm happy with it. But I adore fashion that has a unique feel to it. I adore fashion that has personalized feel to it, and things that become a timeless factor on people because of how the person chooses to carry it, not because of when it was produced or when it was made.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
So hopefully, we are just cultivating our resources
Mhm.
in and making all the connections with our partners all over the globe, and that we can deliver those stories through our clothes. So that's what we are working on right now.
Well, I very, very much look forward to see how you guys develop everything, how you develop, your community projects, and how your voice develops throughout 2020, because there's a lot of people that say things, but they don't always say things with meaning. And one thing that's come across in our several conversations is that you are very deliberate, not just in how you make clothes, but in how you think and how you act towards people,
Exactly.
which is an excellent trait.
Yeah. I mean, whether we see it with our eyes or not, clothes has a very powerful way of communicating with the other person that's coming in front of you. You know, one thing I don't want to say I despise, but I'm always kind of like frowned upon when people say, "Oh, nobody care about what I'm wearing." Are you sure about that?
You never know who's looking at you, that's for sure.
People do look what you're wearing. I don't. From even babies do.
Mhm.
Even babies. It is in our DNA about who we are is by what we are dressed like. You know. So from there we can start. Then that's my thing. I'm not saying it is the 100% cure. We can start some type of dialogue by dressing people to have some type of meaningful conversation, not only about the earth, our communities, our leaders, and so on and so on.
Well, for everybody out there who would want to get in touch with you, either to help you with continue a dialogue or help create a dialogue, or they just want to see what you have to offer fashion-wise, or they want to visit your website and see some of the amazing things that you put on people to make them feel wonderful about themselves. We've talked about your website, which is
Yeah.
catou.com. Where can they find you on social media?
I'm all over Facebook, and also you can just look up my name, Bernie. It's spelled with a Y,
Mm-hmm.
Brny Martin, Martin, and then of course Twitter or and Instagram. All those social media have our footprint on it, and definitely we stay in communication with you guys.
Excellent. Well, we're going to make sure we put all of that in the video too. We're going to go ahead and let you go create some more amazing things, because while I love it, we're going to definitely keep touching base with you, because that insider aspect of watching how things, move forward or step back or develop or change or grow in the fashion industry, to have that person at the front row seat is super valuable. And, to have somebody that is also eloquent and thoughtful is a bonus in my book. Thanks.
Yep, we're here.
But thank you so much for joining me today, Bernie.
Thank you very much for having me.
Come explore the No Strings Attached e-news online magazine. Our global array of authors inspire, delight, and educate with practical and entertaining articles. And with Focus On, we help producers of film, web series, and other video content attract a wider audience. Plus, your project can stream on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and more with our media partners E360 TV and NETV. No Strings Attached e-news, focusing on human interest. Advertising available, nsaen.com.